Welcome back, crew. It's February, and we are diving into Magpie Games' amazing Avatar Legends tabletop RPG. Now, if you are a Avatar fan, whether it be Korra or The Last Airbender, you've probably dreamt of getting into some crazy fights with heroic bending and crazy weapon use in the Avatar universe. And this system has a great way to let you live that out. And today we're going to be going over the Avatar Legends Exchange combat system. Now, a lot of people are probably wondering with being a powered by the apocalypse style game, usually they don't have strict combat rules, but this system actually went in and built kind of a more robust combat equation, we'll say, that you could throw into your games and really reflect the world's kind of intricate and martial nature that gets displayed during the show. So shout outs to them for doing that. And today we're going to dive into it so you know how to run combat in the Avatar Legends system and can bring that to you and your crew. Before we do that, as always with each of our games of the month, we hold a live actual play video of our of the system. So we're going to be doing the same for Avatar Legends 2 days from now, Thursday, February 23rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on my channel, T&J Gaming, linked down in the description at twitch.com. Make sure to come through. We're going to have a blast with this. We've got a good group. We're going to have some of the goofiness Avatar is known for, and definitely some of the crazy bending fights. But as always, we're going to show the system off and then give a copy of the PDF away for free to one lucky viewer. So make sure you join us tomorrow or Thursday, 7 o'clock Eastern Time on my channel, T&J Gaming, and maybe you'll be one of the lucky viewers to get to bring this home to you and your crew. But yeah, let's dive in though. So before we dive in, I want to give a big shout out to Magpie. I appreciate whenever a system has easy one-page documents that go over different pieces of the system. Definitely still read the book, but for showing it off and kind of letting the viewers see what's going on, this definitely makes it easy, and especially makes it easy too when you're at the table, when you've got one sheet you can look at and kind of see exactly what the flow and what things you can do on your turn are. Especially when it's official. A lot of TTRPG companies, for some reason, don't make the official ones, and you have to wait for the fan-made ones, which sometimes can be a little off. But with this one, it's official, it's condensed, and it makes sense. So big shout out to Magpie. So with this, we're going to be going over today the steps in setting up in a combat. We're going to go over why and when you should set up combat, and using the official combat rules for the combat. And then we're going to be going over the different techniques you can do, as well as the statuses that may be inflicted due to combat. So before we go into these whole rules, they actually kind of give a good walkthrough in the book, and unfortunately it's not in this sheet, about when you should be setting up combat, or shifting into the exchange rules, I should say. Because the nice thing with the system they have, and you definitely check out our last video going over some of the core mechanics, is you could definitely run some combats without actually using the exchange rules. And basically they say to kind of use the basic rules, either using rely on skills and training or using push your luck. And you only utilize those when the combat may be certain or may not be as interesting. Because basically what they say is when you want to run the exchange rules, their kind of premier combat system, you want to make sure that this fight is up in the air and has entertaining results. And what we mean by that is if the combat's certain, if your pro team of benders is going up against a kind of a gang of ruffian teenagers who really aren't all together, don't waste time going to the exchange rules. Let your players rely on skills and training and push their luck to clear it out and kind of get back to more interesting scenes or fiction within the game. And on the same side, too, even if they are going up against a group of Fire Nation soldiers that were trained and hardened for the battle, if it's not going to be entertaining if they win or lose, sometimes it's best to resolve it quickly and move to another scene that may be more engaging, way more to the story, and have a better fiction for your players to interact with. So those are the big things. Is it going to be fun? Is it going to be worth it for the fiction? And is the outcome uncertain? And if you can say yes to both of those, move them into the exchange rules. And with once they're in the exchange rules, basically, it's going to flow a little bit different. The biggest piece is there's going to be different approaches that your players can take once they're in this role. There's 3 approaches: defend and maneuver, advance and attack, and evade and observe. And basically, once they choose these different approaches, they're going to be kind of thrown into the combat side, and they'll be restricted to using techniques that align with the approach they've used. Now, there is an order of operations for this too, because step one of this is the NPCs are also going to pick their approaches. But before we even go into step one of the things the book describes, unfortunately the tip sheet didn't have it on there, is, and this is usually it's kind of bread and butter for most game masters, but definitely want to call it out for this, is you want to describe the scene. Especially if you got like benders on the team, you want to let them know, hey, you're fighting 6 different opponents. You're surrounded by mountains on all sides with a stream running across. You want to let them know where the elements are, where the pieces of fiction are, and where there may be different spots they can utilize in their RP, the fiction, or even gain advantage with different status effects. So really make sure you describe that and make sure you let the players know the number and type of combatants they're going up against. Because one of the things the system also encourages is that during the exchange, PCs and NPCs should pair off. So like, and it doesn't have to be like a 1-to-1 ratio. If you've got in the fight 2 Earth Kingdom benders, and then kind of a trio or a kind of group of Earth Kingdom soldiers supporting them, you can have player A take the soldiers, and the other 2 players take the benders on and kind of matching up with one-on-one fights. They do encourage to do the one-on-one fights, but you can definitely, if you're fighting another bender or fighting somebody that's worth ganging up on them, you can gang up on one of the PCs. One thing they do call out, I don't think that's on the tip sheet, unfortunately, but it is worth mentioning that if your players don't match up with a certain PC, let's say they all pile on the 2 Earthbenders but leave the soldiers intact, or kind of unengaged, I should say, the soldiers can still take moves. And sometimes they recommend kind of using those to advance the fiction. Have the soldiers ransack the village while they're fighting, the players are fighting with the other benders, or have them do something that increases the stakes, shows what they can do, and keeps everybody engaged at the table. But if you've done all that, we can dive into step 1. And that's where the GM chooses their approach for their NPCs. They do this secretly. They don't announce what they're doing for the NPCs. And then after that, the players are going to go through and decide their approaches. And when they decide their approach, they're going to resolve it as well. And so when you resolve an approach, each of the 3 different approaches have different stats tied to them. With the defend and maneuver, you're tied to focus. Advanced attack, tied to passion. And evade and observe is tied to harmony as well as creativity. And with that, you're going to choose which one you're doing, and you're going to roll. On a hit, you're going to be able to choose between the list of 3 different 3 options for the different techniques you can do. So if you hit a hit, you can do mark 1 fatigue to use a learned technique, or you can use a 1 practice technique, or you can use 2 different basic or master techniques. On a 7 through 9, you can use 1 basic or master technique. On a miss, you can shift your balance and still use 1 basic technique. So it's nice. It gives you a lot of different elements that you can do. And we're going to be going through and reviewing the basic techniques. These are available to everyone. Unfortunately, we're not going to touch on the master techniques or learned techniques. Different advanced techniques you can pick as mastered or learned with the system today. But you can definitely take a look at them. They will all follow this kind of guidelines. So with this too, the nice thing as well is that if you do have an NPCs in the battle, they're very simplified. NPCs don't need to roll to kind of determine how many techniques they can use in a round. They can use 1 plus their balance. So if they have a +1 balance, they can use 2 techniques in the round. And remember, since they're picking an approach, they're going to be limited to the approach techniques they have available to them. So after your players go through and pick that, the GM reveals and decides what each of their NPCs are doing. So they'd go through and list their NPCs, saying who's attacking, who's evading, who's defending. Now after that, each of the different styles of approach go in a different order. So there's no initiative for this system. They're going to be going in basically the order of the approach they picked. With defending starting off first, attacking next, and then finally ending with evading. And those are the kind of the next 3 steps. So 4 defend, 5 attack, 6 evade. After all that goes through, you'll then determine kind of who lost their balance, who may be knocked completely out of the fight. And because this is a little bit of an interesting piece with it. Because with those, there's a clear order of what goes on. But let's say somebody in the attack stage, they knocked a person out of the combat. if you're knocked one of the evading people out of the combat, the person that's doing evasion will still get to do their turn, but then at 7, they're going to resolve all of that. So if they were knocked out or if they lost balance and control, that's when the game master is going to go through and resolve those consequences. So you'll still be able to get your action off, but there's going to, with all of everything kind of happening at once, then you'll be hit with what took place. But as you see, those are the 7 steps of combat. Fairly simple. The nice thing to do, though, is the system encourages you after each exchange to go back and kind of review, is combat still necessary? So this isn't like initiative with Pathfinder or D&D 5e. They encourage you that if, after those exchange of combats go through, for both the NPCs and PCs, to look if they still want to keep fighting. Maybe they want to flee. Maybe they want to set fire to the town around them rather than continue to engage. Or maybe they want to talk it out afterwards. Those are all options you can take after the exchange, and then you only go back into step 1 of the exchange if both parties continue to keep fighting. So keeps it interesting on that side, and really kind of recommended avoiding against getting into a spot where maybe a grind or just kind of continuous combat. Continually kind of rework the story or kind of work the story, keep creating fun fiction, both players and game masters on that side. So with that, we're going to go move from taking a look at the steps to taking a look at the different options you have available to you in combat. So each of the 3 different approaches has 3 different techniques within them. As I mentioned, advanced techniques are available as well. We're not going to cover them in this video, so don't feel like you can only do these 3 basic techniques. These are just what everybody has available to them, regardless of what they've taken. So with this, we're going to start with Defend and Maneuver. It's the first one to act. And with this, you could choose from the 3 options. Ready is going to allow you to mark 1 fatigue, and you can ready yourself or your environment, which will allow you to either clear a condition or assign a condition. And we're going to touch on conditions next. Conditions can be both positive or negative. And with assigning the condition, you can do it to a nearby character. So this could be something like if you're by a lake of water, using your water bending to freeze it to make the conditions a little bit more advantageous to yourself. Also, after that, they got retaliate. You steel yourself for the opponent's blows. And each time a foe inflicts fatigue, a condition, or shifts your balance in this exchange, you can inflict fatigue on that foe. Pretty cool. After that, you've got the last one and the defend one. You can seize a position. Basically, that's going to allow you to move to a new location, and you can engage or disengage with the foe, and you can overcome a negative status or danger, establish an advantageous position, or escape the scene. So this can be kind of a way you can get out of dodge and kind of escape whatever's going on. Now, if you're trying to hold somebody there, any foe that's engaged with you can mark 1 fatigue to block this technique. So definitely it's always good to engage, especially if you want to make sure somebody stays with you, engage with them, because if you're not engaged with them, they can just dip out and leave. But those are the defend rules. Now we're going to move into advance and attack rolls. And with this too, I should have mentioned at the top. So this was a little confusing to me at first too, because I thought you'd have to roll for these different techniques. You don't. The role you have to do is when you initially decide your approach. And then after that, you can just do these different techniques. You could do as many as you have available to you. So, you saw the 10, you could do 2 basic techniques if you wanted to, or if you were able to, or you could do a basic and a master, kind of pick around, and your NPCs always get 1 plus their balance. So, that was one thing that always confused me, so I wanted to make sure to share the wisdom. But now we'll get into the strike ones. And this is where I want to call out too. There's no bending move. So you can use your bending in any of these different approaches to kind of flavor how you're doing what's going on. And definitely make sure to put the fiction first as you're going through and applying different statuses and effects. Make sure it really kind of flows with whatever you're doing. So with this, with strike, you could be using your fist, you could be using fireballs, earth, whatever you're doing. But with strike, you can strike a foe, forcing them to either mark 2 fatigue, mark a condition, or shift their balance away from center. They get to choose. Now, if you want to choose, you get to mark 1 fatigue, and basically you're going to hammer them with their blows. You get to force same options, but you get to force them to pick the one you want. So you could pressure somebody, you could impress and intimidate a foe, maybe you do a crazy storm of lightning bending around you, try to just intimidate them and keep them from using the approach that you think they may use next turn. So if you think they're advancing, they're ready to try to attack you, you can use Intimidate, and basically your foe can't use the advanced attack approach next turn. No roll necessary. Remember, this applies to next turn, so if they are using attack and advance this turn, you can't stop them. It basically stops them from picking it next turn. And then finally, you could smash Mark 1 Fatigue to destroy or destabilize something in the environment, either inflicting or overcoming a fictionally appropriate positive or negative stats. And then finally, on the last ones, we got the Evade and Observe. With this, you can clear 1 Fatigue if you do choose this route, and then you roll with Creativity and Harmony as usual. But with this as well, you get 3 different techniques you can utilize. You got the Test Balance. You can mark feeling fatigue to challenge to gauge foes' balance. This is kind of a cool RP one that a lot of the different PBTA style games have. Basically, it's going to allow you to ask what their principle is. They have to answer you honestly. And if you already know their principle, you can shift their balance and then call them out, challenging their beliefs or challenging their perspective. It's going to be kind of a good way for having a good RP exchange during the combat. You could also bolster or hinder, either aid or impede a nearby character, inflicting an appropriate status. So you could be kind of creating little pits of earth or bolstering somebody up with some air bending to give them a little boost as they need to get to their next objective. Whatever you can do and kind of justify within the fiction to impart those statuses. Or you can commit, which is going to allow you to recenter yourself amidst the fray. You can shift your balance towards one of your principles, and the next time you live up to that principle, you don't have to mark a fatigue. So those are the 3 techniques for each of the 3 core approaches. Now, the last thing we're going to touch on before we wrap up today are the different conditions, both positive and negative, that can be gifted or inflicted upon you. So, negative, start off with that. The Doom condition. You're in grave danger with this one. So this could be something terrible's happened to you. Maybe somebody's like set you on fire, whatever may have happened. Basically, you're going to be marking 1 fatigue every few seconds or each exchange. And that's one thing to note too. Every few exchange should be a few seconds. So anytime they say a few seconds for the condition, just kind of mark that in your mind as each exchange. Or if you're not in combat mode or if it persists after combat mode, just make sure to kind of as appropriate add the consequence in. But yeah, you mark that fatigue. For impaired, you're slowed or off balance. You mark 1 fatigue or take -2 to all physical actions, your choice. Trapped, you're completely helpless. You must mark a combination of 3 conditions or fatigue to escape. And conditions, remember, these are like the angry or scared or different things like that may be inflicted upon you. So you need to mark either those or fatigue to get out. And then finally, stunned, you're caught completely off guard. You can't act or respond for a few seconds in exchange until you steady yourself. So if you were in exchange on this one, basically those effects are going to happen to you. If they're still fighting somebody, they're still going to be going after you. And then you kind of figure out what happens after that. Finally, though, they've got some positive statuses too. These aren't all kind of doom and gloom. A lot of the different actions and conditions allowed you to give yourself a little bit of a boost. And with that, you can choose Empowered, which means your abilities are naturally stronger in this moment. Clear 1 fatigue at the end of each exchange. Favored, you're buoyed by circumstance. You could choose an additional basic or master technique in the next exchange, even on a miss. So it gets you a little bit extra. You can do that next turn. Inspired, you're ready to stand for your principle, or stand for something, I should say. You can clear Inspired to shift your balance toward a principle of your choice. Prepared to, which is kind of a good one that fits with that ready action on the defend and maneuver. This allows you're ready for what's coming next. Clear prepared to take a +1 to an appropriate roll. And you can do this after the roll or to avoid marking a condition. But yeah, this is kind of a quick look through the combat rules. You see, much more robust than a lot of the usual Powered by the Apocalypse style games. And I'm really looking forward to kind of testing it out during our live actual play of the game. So make sure to come by this Thursday, 2 days away, the 23rd of February. You get to see this played out. Or if you're watching this as a recording past then, keep an eye out. We'll be posting the recording of the live play so you can see how these rules work in real time and see how me and my players run through them. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. If you're new to the channel, I recommend liking, subscribing. Each month we post a different tabletop RPG and make it our game of the month. This month was Avatar Legends. Not sure what March is going to be yet, but we're going to go through, as always, look through how to build a PC, go through combat mechanics, adventuring mechanics, and something unique for the system. And stay tuned for something unique for Avatar. Wednesday, or we're going to be coming out tomorrow, I should say. We're coming out with our review or kind of guidelines for the different errors you can run an Avatar game in. I thought the book did a really good job of setting those errors up and giving game masters a little bit of inspiration for running adventures. So that will be our next video, so stay tuned for that. But overall, thanks for coming through. Like, subscribe, and until next time.